Hey, what's up, everybody? BF44 coming at you with another video. All right, so it's draft day, man. First round day. Tomorrow's round 2 day. Of course, they split it up over the last 2 years. I don't like it. I want them to turn it back into 1 day, honestly, because my enthusiasm for the second round does not match my enthusiasm for the first round. So it's best for me to have it on 1 day. You see all of the picks in 1 day, and rather than to ask me to come back the next day and sit in front of a TV for solely the second round. I didn't watch it last year, the second round, and I have my doubts that I'm going to force myself to see it this year either. But the first round, I have every intention of seeing, and I think it's going to go well. I think it's going to go very well, and I'm here to talk a little bit about that. So what comes to mind is the Brooklyn Nets, man. They got 5 picks after yesterday's Porzingis trade that they were involved in. They took back Terrence Mann, and his contract has him on the hook for $15 million for 3 years. And so with that came a first rounder, and now that gives him 5 first round picks. And with 5 first round picks, the Nets have a lot of options. I think their best option is to probably move some of those picks for future picks. You got teams like the Clippers, you got teams like the Lakers, you got teams like New York that don't have any first round picks, but they do have maybe a 20-30 that they can trade you. I would do that. I would take my pick, trade it for your future, just like the Indiana Pacers did with the Pelicans, trading away a first round pick for next year's first round pick. I think that's the smartest thing for the Nets to do, because what they want to do with their rebuild is be pick rich. And that's what they found themselves being with 5 first rounders. The problem is all them first rounders come in the same year. So what you're going to find out is you got a bunch of rookies next year that likely you're not going to give enough roles to develop them into their highest peak. Them picks, once you draft them picks, they're not worth the same amount as they are as unknown prospects that provide you whatever choice you would have in the draft as a holder of those picks. That optionality is worth more than a finite understanding of a singular player with strengths and weaknesses. You immediately, by the presence of that, lose value in the pick. I think of a guy like Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham right now goes for 1/3 of what he went for before he was drafted as the 7th overall pick from the San Antonio Spurs. Now that he's played a year with the Minnesota Timberwolves where he didn't play much, got injured, he's a role player until proven otherwise. He's worth so much more before he's drafted, because he's not Rob Dillingham. He's a million different people that could be drafted at that spot, which gives you the optionality, again, to pick what you want. So that choice is what you ultimately holds the value. What ultimately holds the value of a pick is the choice and the option and the unknown and the variables that come with the strengths and weaknesses of multiple players that can fit my situation, rather than you zeroing in on a guy and now I either need that guy or I don't. And so as long as you understand that as you hold picks, you understand that so long as they remain picks, they're as valuable as they're considered. Once you draft them, regardless if the player is desirable or not, interchangeable or not, they are now a finite person that either fits my situation or not. And that kind of pulls away from how many different teams that would be interested in that player. So if I'm the Nets, I have that in mind, and I'm going to remain pick rich. I'm not drafting all of those picks unless I just absolutely love each and every one of the players that are available to me. And that's kind of hard to determine. Not to mention that it's a hell of a strain on your training staff to make the right decisions and advising you to take whomever you should with 5 picks. It's hard enough picking 2 good players out of a pack. Making sure you hit on all of them is not something that you would expect is an easy task. And then from there, you're asking your coach to coach up 5 young players that all need to develop over the course of maybe 4 years. The chances of you keeping those players at their value is so damn slim. The odds of them players all being able to help you on your timeline is so damn slim. The odds of you not paying all of those players if they do pop is very high, because what you end up having is a bunch of players in a situation where now let's say the 27th pick turns out to be an all-star. The 22nd pick turns out to be an all-star. All these players end up being as good as they're supposed to be. Now all of a sudden, you only have but so many contracts you can divvy out to these dudes. You're going to be asking them to take pay cuts or risking them potentially leaving. Or you're going to do like Golden State did with Kuminga and only play them a certain amount of minutes so that you can keep their value low so that they don't have the leverage to demand to get paid so much. Lowballing them, thus eating away at their progress on the court as well, because if they're not getting minutes, they're not getting better. And so it's a lot of different things that go wrong if you're the Nets. If you draft all of these players, fewer things that go right than what's potentially set in front of you to go wrong. And so if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I just want to say, hey, look, Lakers, you need a pick. Golden State, you can use a pick. New York, you can use a pick. All of you guys, give me your 2031, 2032, 2028. It shouldn't be any problem for these teams to be willing to give you picks, and then just keep 2 of them and just draft 2 of them. And if for some reason you love what you see next year in the draft, you take them picks that you just were traded and do the same thing with somebody else to give you a pick that moment. And then you always are in a position to trade for the best players because you pick rich. You're in a position to revamp your situation in a lot of different ways. You can add picks to contracts that maybe you want to move. You just remain flexible. And that's ultimately what is necessary in this world of the NBA. So the Nets, what it is that I'm hearing they want to do, though you never know what's real information, what I hear they want to do is they want to draft all of those players. And in putting themselves in a position to draft all of those players, they're going to find that they don't have the picks in their war chest that make them as flexible anymore. Now you're trying to trade young players potentially, or maybe you find you don't want to trade those young players. So the willingness to trade picks versus the willingness to trade players becomes something entirely different. Now I got Nick Clifford, for example, in place. I don't want to trade Nick Clifford. He's part of my rotation. He's part of what it is I'm doing in my future. But if I would have traded him as a pick, he wasn't Nick Clifford. He was a guy I could use as a tradable equity that I could maybe do something else with. So you start eating away at what it is that you're ultimately building once you start reaching into what's most valuable. And that doesn't necessarily has to be the case when players are picks. So this is the energy I'm giving you guys as it pertains to the Nets situation. There's a world where they strike it rich on all of these players. There's a world where 3 out of 5 of them are fantastic. There's a world where they strike out on all of these players and they all don't develop. There's a world where their team is something very special because they put together a bunch of stuff that only could be found in the draft. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of different things that could go a lot of different ways. But I think the safest thing for a team like the Nets, who's trying to rebuild, is to respect that it's not in your best interest to have a 1/6 of the first round all to yourself when it's incumbent upon you to develop all of those players. And most of them are in the second half of the first round. They're not the top lottery guys. Only one of them is a lottery pick. The rest of them are in the 20s. So it's like, I understand if they want to move up, maybe take the 2 last picks that they have and trade them for a closer pick. That might make sense. But just the same, you're not as pick rich. And sometimes when you take the 14th overall pick, for example, he ain't that much better than the 28th overall pick. So you end up dwindling in value, thinking that you're picking up something that's ultimately not going to be what you think it's going to be. He busts out and all of a sudden, you're not just down 1 pick, you're down 3. Essentially is how that looks. So it's like, I don't particularly love that idea either. I like to trade those picks to teams that don't have picks, or teams that are willing to give me their futures. You know what I mean? Instead of taking number 8 and number 23 and then moving up to 5 and taking a guy that probably would have fell to 8 any damn way. That kind of thing you don't want to do if you're Brooklyn. And another thing that I think needs to be understood is the Brooklyn Nets have been a team that has had no interest in young players or picks over the last several years. Now, does this equate to them not having a great scouting team or having a great program from which to develop players? Only Brooklyn Nets fans know if it does. But it stands to reason why a person like myself from the outside looking in would question whether or not they have the development system to develop young players. Least of all 5 rookies in the same damn draft. You understand what I'm saying? A team that didn't even want picks 2 years ago is now supposed to be the best developmental program for these children? Nah, bro. That's not realistic. It's more realistic to think that they're probably not ready for this. And they're about to bring these kids in without excellent program for the development of young players. So without actually knowing, I would say in a lot of cases, teams like them don't have the greatest, and they need to develop that before they're ready to bring in 5 damn rookies that they're responsible for developing, all to their best selves. So that's what comes to mind before the draft for me, man, is what is Brooklyn going to do? And are they going to make a responsible decision in this situation? Because they're not known for making many responsible decisions. You know, I think teams need to be very careful not to reach, man. We've seen teams make a lot of mistakes reaching for players, bro. And then most of the time, they end up regretting it. And I can think of several situations. Last year with A.J. Johnson and the Bucks, he was supposed to go in the second round. They took him with like the 20th pick or something like that. Ended up trading him his rookie season to another team. First round pick out the window. Dissolved into nothing. They don't even have it anymore. They're not even developing a player. He's gone. The pick is literally gone. They traded it for, I don't even know if they traded it for anything valuable, to be honest with you. I don't think they did. So, like, I remember the Bucks doing that a long time ago, maybe like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. They took a guy that they could have gotten in the second round at the 10th overall pick. Like, that is not harmless. I need teams who follow me, people who follow me, to understand how harmless that is not. It's very harmful, because what you end up doing is, just like we said in regards to trading 2 picks for 1, and then it ended up being a guy who should have been taken, who likely was misevaluated as a better player than he is. You end up losing value, and that value is represented in what your players are worth, how much you can trade to get better, and all these different things that turn you into somebody that a team player would either want to go to or not. And so these type of things, like, are you good or are you bad teams? If you make enough of these type of decisions, you end up being a bad team. You make enough of these decisions and you end up not having enough. Your team is shallow. You don't have a good bench. This is not a harmless situation. You want every bit of your value to be represented in the talent that you have. You know what I mean? It's something that I learned in fantasy sports as well. And you take a guy in the first round that you could have gotten in the third round, and yeah, you got the guy you wanted, but now you look at your draft and you realize that some teams in your league have like super teams, and it's because you left so much talent on the board that talent got divvied out into more tight spaces instead of being balanced out to go where you have, to go to you. If somebody else does that in your league, now all of a sudden you got one team that got nothing but a super team, because he was able to pick up everything at the value it was supposed to be, while people were skipping over value to take players they wanted. You end up with shallow teams. So it's like, this is the same thing that happens in the NBA. And I just got a feeling that because people like so many different players in so many different ranges, you can find a guy that's supposed to go in the second round, go as high as 18 tonight. And I think there are a lot of GMs that don't understand how harmful that is to the overall franchise health. If you have a guy that's supposed to go in the second round and you happen to have a pick that's at like 26, you need to trade down. You really do need to trade down. And you may very well be right about this guy. But for the possibility that you're wrong, you are really throwing a lot of value down the toilet that does find itself being absent when you look at the makeup of your roster. If you find it being absent when it's time for you to go to the trade table and try to get something you want. It's very harmful, and it's something that is disrespected year in and year out by somebody every single year. And it's been the Bucks more than once. And so for whatever it's worth, you look at the Bucks and see how shallow their team is, see how most of their talent is wrapped up in either Giannis or Dame Lillard. These are the type of decisions that ultimately made them look that way. You just got to stop doing it. You know what I mean? Everybody needs to be respectful of the value of players, the value of picks. And if they are, their teams look better. The teams that don't have that being a mistake that they make ends up being a team that ultimately looks like OKC, ends up looking like some of these teams that have a lot of value on the roster up and down. So that's really what I want to say to y'all. Let's just respect the value as we continue to evaluate what it is we want. If you have something that you like in the 10 range and you happen to have like the 3rd overall pick, trade down. I heard Charlotte may be interested in Concacaf. Trade down. Concacaf's not supposed to be a top 4 pick. necessarily. And if you take him at 4, you're leaving a lot of value on the table. And that value will be represented in what is absent when your team is being evaluated. And so that's what I want to say, man. There's a lot of teams out there who think they want a certain player and they think this player is going to be a certain thing. But it's not about that. It's about the value of a pick before it's picked and how much that's worth before the choice is made. And that's what you leave on the table, whether you're making a good decision as it pertains to you reaching for somebody or not. It's never a good decision to reach for anybody for that reason. It's never a good decision. If you feel like there's no chance you can get your guy because someone's absolutely going to take him, then maybe you just forego that value, but you got to understand what you're doing when you do that. You know? And so is the risk really worth it for you? Do you just have to have that guy? Can you not find a way to get that guy next year or the year after that? You know what I mean? When he's no longer a draft pick, but somebody on the back of the bench who was underutilized in his rookie season or his sophomore season. Like, this could be the time to go get the guy. You know, I think about Phoenix when they were able to get Jalen Green in this trade. Nobody thinks that's a great trade, but what if they valued Jalen Green as the first overall pick on draft day? You know what I mean? Now they got him in a different value range. Maybe there's a contract attached to him. Maybe they're going to have to negotiate with him. But the point is, if they loved him like they thought he was going to be Kobe Bryant 4 years ago when he was drafted, who's to say they don't love him the same way right now and just got him for a different price tag, a better price tag? I don't know. It's an example. May not be the greatest one, but the point is, you don't always have to get the player that you love on draft night because he's at his most expensive on draft night as a young player. That's when he's his most expensive, right before he's drafted, when you think somebody else is going to take it. So I just want to put that out there because I watch teams make that mistake every year. And I've only seen maybe 1 or 2 teams actually be pleased with that decision. BDO 44, I thank you all for watching.